is coming this evening, ladies and gentlemen, from New York, where at least 16 people were injured when an unidentified masked attacker released a gas canister in a New York subway before randomly opening fire at innocent civilians. A terror angle has not yet been declared, but it has also not yet been ruled out. Let's debate.
During rush hour in New York, a gunman filled the subway train in Brooklyn with smoke and then opened fire. Leaving wounded commuters bleeding on a Brooklyn platform as others ran screaming.
It was like 9 or so, and we saw commotion, we saw cop cars pulling up, so we were concerned. We were gonna go outside and check what was going on, but we didn't actually go downstairs, which we're glad we didn't. But we saw an ambulance coming out with a stretcher with a person on it. Their leg was injured. I'm not sure exactly what went on or what was going on. And then we saw after that 2 ambulances coming out with 2 people like hopping on one leg.
Investigators believe the suspect deployed a smoke device before opening fire.
It was on 36th Street where I guess it all happened. I didn't hear it. It was on 36th Street. And the train driver, he told everyone to get on the train. And it was scary. I didn't know what was happening.
Begin by assuring the public that there are currently no known explosive devices on our subway trains, and this is not being investigated as an act of terrorism at this time.
It's not a terror attack. We're not hearing any reports of any other situations in New York, but I will say just from walking around Manhattan, there's definitely a sense of uneasiness. People take the subway here to work. It's the main form of transportation. And so there's certainly a very, uneasy sense in the air because it's the main way that people get around here in New York.
Let's debate.
Adel Nazarian is media fellow at the Gold Institute for International Strategy. Dov Zakheim is former Undersecretary of Defense in the George W. Bush administration. Colonel Rich Outzen is a former senior advisor at the State Department. We also have with us, Brigadier General Nitzan Nuriel, former head of Counterterrorism Bureau of Israel. Lev Aran, journalist and columnist, is joining us from Haifa in Israel. And we have Saurabh Shukla, Editor-in-Chief of NewsMobile.in, and Dr. Swasti Rao, Associate Fellow at the Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis in Delhi. Thank you very much. Brigadier General Nuriel first, just wanted to ask you, when an incident like this happens and the response is this is not an act of terrorism, then the question becomes what defines terrorism? People have been attacked in a subway, people have taken arms. It's not just a gas canister. There's been open shooting inside a subway. There seems to be a sense of denial here in New York that this is not an act of terrorism. What defines an act of terrorism then?
It is active of terrorism. We believe that any attack against innocent civilian, it is a terrorism, and we should take actions in order to prevent it. No doubt that this is a terror event. The reason, the cause, the background is still not yet fully understood by the New York police.
Yeah, but let's look at the timing. This happens peak hours, around 8:30. Around 8:30, Lev Aran, around 8:30 in the morning, right? I expect this is nearing peak hours, office time in New York. So the idea is to inflict maximum damage, and there's random shooting. So the ingredients are there of a straightforward terrorist attack out here. What do you think, Lev?
I cannot say a lot about New York because I guess that tomorrow we will know much better. But anyway, it looks like they wanted to kill people for killing people. It was not a robbery. And it caused terror. So in this sense, it is terror, no doubt.
Absolutely. Colonel Rich Outzen, why is there this sort of muted reaction? We saw the pictures there, and it was frightening. If I can run some full-frame pictures there, viewers, of the moment the doors of the subway were opened, and then there was just gas pouring out. and people were running out helter-skelter, all very scared, very frightened. Colonel Rich, somewhere I think there seems to be like underplaying of this incident. Well, isn't it?
Unfortunately, in the United States, we have different types of mass shootings. There's strictly criminal mass shootings that we've had at some schools, even just last week in Sacramento and California, crime-related mass shootings. And then there's terror-related mass shootings. We don't know motive until we find the shooter. This is what New York police are still calling an active shooter situation. The gunman got away, and they're still looking for him. There are sound judicial reasons, I think, not to characterize it at this point, because there's a different set of actors and laws that kick in depending on whether it's a terror investigation, which could have international connections, for instance, or whether it's strictly domestic criminal. This one sounds an awful lot like terrorism to me. I would agree with Nitsan and our other speakers so far. With the explosive device, the gas mask, and the apparent use of a false flag, a uniform of the MTA, the Metropolitan Transit Authority, it sure looks like this was someone conducting politically motivated terror, but the investigation will have to yield that. I think they're just being prudent rather than downplaying it at this point.
Yeah, but I'm told undetonated devices were also found. That's what the New York police department, fire department has said in one of the statements. So there's no doubt that there was.
That's right. They said that there are no more unexploded devices, which means that they found, neutralized, and exploded other devices. So it's a very sophisticated attack that certainly makes us inclined to think it was terror.
Which makes it all the more worrying, Adele. You have unexploded devices in a subway, peak traffic, gas canister aimed at causing confusion, and then random shooting. First you blind your victims and then you randomly shoot them, and probably set off an explosion after that. The third did not happen. But if you just see the pictures, Adele, I don't know, what's the response across the US today? I feel it's all being played down. I don't know why. Just can't hear you, Adele. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Yes.
Yes,
So
I can hear you.
Thank you. The pictures are horrific. There is blood everywhere. Thank God there were no one has died. Of course, I think there was last count about 6 people in stable condition, 5 more in critical condition, if I'm not mistaken. And of the 16 people injured, 10 of them were actually shot. So, or there's 5 people in critical condition rather. So I do actually agree with the guest that this is an act of terror, blatant. And the fact that there was, as a gentleman previously pointed out, a sophisticated attack. We don't know if he acted by himself or if he had accomplices or anyone else that helped him in this attack. We also don't know whether or not he was masked. CCTV, of course, captured the individual, and there are lots of eyewitnesses. So identifying him, the individual, which I believe, according to several media sources, has been described as a Black African-American male. We don't know what his motivation was. I will say that I believe that this points to mental health. That's probably an element there. But I do not doubt that law enforcement will be able to nab this individual and to figure out what the exact motives were.
Why this urgency to make this look like a individual attack in which there is no larger play? Does not say anything about the law and order situation in the United States of America. This sense of defensiveness. I mean, I don't know why. Why don't Americans accept what has happened at home?
It's a little bit interesting. Thank you for bringing that up. There's a lot of movements that have been, a mass movement, I would say, over the past few years to quote unquote defund the police. I have to say, if there had been more law enforcement present, maybe it would have even helped thwart the attack. Maybe less people would have been shot at. Maybe someone who was on the train at the instant that this individual opened fire could have, neutralized the individual, prevented them from causing more damage. So this is 100% going to become a political issue, which always happens in these cases, and more than ever before. This is a midterm election year. Unfortunately, there is no doubt it's going to be politicized. But I would really, really hope that in the midst of all that unfolding, people do place a much brighter light, shine a brighter light on the bigger issue, which most likely has to do with mental health. And I would not be surprised as an individual, whether or not they were posing as an MTA individual, how they were able to acquire that uniform, or if they actually were an MTA employee, how they were able to create those undetonated devices, and if there were in fact accomplices. Because for something of this magnitude to unfold, it's more than likely that there was, I'm just assuming here, and I could be wrong, more than likely that there was more than one player involved.
I think Saurabh, it's more than Saurabh. Yes, so Saurabh, there is a sense of fright in America, but there's also a growing sense of denial, because people on political lines don't want to accept the elephant in the room, which is that in America there is no gun control. People carry all kinds of guns, licensed weapons, and they can just shoot at will. And these kind of incidents happens elsewhere. But there is so much money and there is so much capital behind allowing this gun culture that it's sad that Americans constantly die because of incidents like this, if this is an individual incident, right? And at the end of the day, there's a debate, a 6-hour debate in American television for a day. But today's pictures, viewers, you should see the pictures. There was a sense of apprehension or shock after this incident happened. Joe Biden was on the line. He was talking to people about it. And I think the problem is at home. I think when we talk about lone wolf incidents and we say lone wolf incidents are not terrorism, then we haven't fully understood what terrorism really is, Saurabh.
Arnab, absolutely. Having covered counter-terrorism for a long time, studied the epistemology, I can tell you that this has the makings of a terror attack. It's prejudged. We don't want to prejudge the outcome of the investigation as yet. But you called out the elephant in the room rightly. The biggest problem that America faces today is to call out one of the biggest follies, that is open gun culture, which they have to shut it out. No civilized democracy allows this kind of proliferation of guns because of a certain lobby called NRA, which is blackmailing, the population in a democracy. Imagine common people are at risk of being shot at because of the fact that there are open proliferation of guns. Yesterday, President Biden did take some measures, but that's not enough. You need more of that. You need to make sure you have to clear your streets out of these rampant guns which have been destroying families, with mass shootings happening in schools, and now these kind of incidents which are terrorizing people. Certainly, this happens in a city like New York City, which is bouncing back after a bad bout of COVID. This also creates other problems. So America has to realize that it has to take stern action against the rampant gun culture, and whatever it may be, there are lobbies. Yes, I do understand there are lobbies which work, that promote guns on some pretext or the other, but till the time America takes action against these proliferation of guns,
I don't know yet, and I don't want to prejudge whether this is an act of individual crime or an act of terrorism. But I think, Dav, if one does not accept that this is terrorism, then there is genuinely a problem. And I think underplaying the terrorist angle, you just look at it. Look at the number of people who've been hit. This is aimed, Dav, at causing the maximum damage. When the police says there are no undetonated devices, which means there are other devices, they cannot rule out the terrorist angle. The person comes fully armed. He's wearing this vest, he's wearing a gas mask, he's fully armed, he's loaded with guns, he's carrying gas canisters, he goes into the New York subway, right in the middle of rush hour traffic, and goes berserk. Dav.
Well, look. First of all, I agree. Excuse me, I'm speaking right now, sir. I tend to agree that it certainly looks like an act of terror. And as you've heard, we distinguish between individuals who are acting alone and some kind of coordinated effort. It smacks of a coordinated effort. One thing that none of your panelists have pointed out, but having grown up in Brooklyn, I can tell you, that particular station is a place where 3 different train lines all meet. And those train lines go through ethnic neighborhoods, primarily Jewish, Italian, and very heavily Hispanic. So it could have been an individual who was just crazy going after these people, or it could have been, as I tend to agree, an act of terror.
No.
One of the things that is critically important, because it's the rush hour, because so many New Yorkers use the subway, clearly, until they can demonstrate what it was, they don't want to have a panic so that nobody goes to work and nobody takes the subway, which is why I think they're playing it down. I don't think they're playing it down simply in order to cover up if it was a terrorist attack.
No, but
I guarantee you,
Dov,
if it was a terrorist attack, it's going to come out.
But Dov, there is. You know, you're also in denial. I'm sorry, because you know that in America today, your president, Joe Biden, is so weak that even though he tries to tackle the issue of ghost guns, which are privately made arms, they don't have serial numbers, you know, and everyone's using them all over America. There's no rule of law in America today. People carry ghost guns.
Wait a minute.
Well, what do I need to wait a minute for? Am I wrong about anything? Are there not ghost guns, millions of ghost guns all over America?
No, there aren't millions, and the ghost guns have to get
There truly aren't.
Look.
No, tell me one thing. Are people not randomly carrying guns without serial numbers all over America right now? And your president can't do anything about it. And the question is...
That's not true. That's simply not true.
Look at the pictures today, viewers. I think we need to see them closely.
The Second Amendment clearly allows people to carry guns. There's legislation that I would certainly support that would limit the kinds of guns, automatic guns and so on. These unauthorized, unserial numbered guns, these ghost guns, are now going to be illegal.
No, there is an entire industry out there. I see, Dov, I'm not saying this because I'm anti-American. I'm saying this because I like we all care about the safety of the American people. The fact of the matter is, Swasti Rao is there, and if you don't wake up today to it, I don't know, people, you know, when they go to America, they say, stay safe, this is America, anything happens anywhere, people carry guns, there are shootings in college campuses, on the streets, in subways. How many more mass shootings need to happen before Americans can exercise some influence over the people who make money, you know, on the lives of fellow Americans? Hundreds of Americans have died, but all that you do is to indirectly make sure that there isn't adequate gun control. And I'm not even saying this could be a terrorist incident. You've had the worst terrorist incident on your soil in the same city where this attack happened today, Dr. Swasti, but this blasé attitude among the Americans is what I find shocking. If this happened to any other country today, the whole system would have been waking up. In America, there's a sense of denial. Let's play it down. Let's hush it down. You know, it's not going to be good for our country's image. Dr. Swasti, please, from New Delhi, who's also a security expert. Dr. Swasti Rao, please.
Yeah, good evening, Arnab. And yes, I'm as appalled. You know, in any other part of the world, I mean, there wouldn't be denial, at least. Okay, I mean, look at their numbers and look at the irony. You know, there's this the military-industrial complex of America that is creating havoc in world over, right? Whether it's Ukraine or Afghanistan or wherever the military-industrial complex runs, and just wreaks havoc. And look at what they're doing. The domestic arms industry in America is wreaking havoc domestically. There are about 400 million guns, you know, that are there in America today. And why on earth are they not being banned? What sort of a culture is that? You know, that's one. I mean, I'm as appalled. Okay. The other thing is that as far as this particular attack is concerned, you know, I was just reading up and I found out that the mayor of New York is a Democrat too. You know, he is a new guy. He's just been in office for about 100 days. And when he came in, actually cracking down on these kind of random terrorist activities, and especially on the subways, was one of his agendas. And he had pledged that he would increase the police patrol and all of that considerably. And look at what has happened just 100 days into his being in office. And this is when America already has a very bad record of, you know, an increase in such violence, such acts of violence. Now, whether there is a I
just feel the American, you know, I must say that, you know, I was so amused when Blinken talks about human rights violations in India. I say, you know, that Blinken should first look at the violation of human rights of his fellow Americans who are on those who was on the subway today in New York, and the fact that the American government is too weak to even take on the gun lobby. Consider this, and I want to go to Farshid Bagharian from Tehran. In this case, I don't understand why the Americans are still denying the terrorist angle, because this person is wearing a gas mask. He is mimicking the dress, the attire of the uniform of the Metropolitan Transport Authority worker. He wears a gas mask. He mimics an empty authority worker's uniform. He carries loads of gas canisters, goes fully armed, possibly with bombs, and enters the subway and carries out his plan. If this is not terrorism, I don't know what is, Mr. Bagarian. But I'm shocked that the Americans are still not willing to describe it so.
Okay, thank you very much for your invitation. First of all, I personally want to condemn any civilian attack all around the world. But this scenario brought to my mind American masterpiece on September 11 attack at Twin Tower. And I cannot believe that this is the real show. It's some play, some kind of play for misdirection. I'm so sorry for that, because, you know, the mask gas is another part of the scenario for preparing people for example, for biochemical attack in Ukraine. And what is the biochemical attack or chemical? This is some kind of clue for the people. And another thing is the Biden administration right now, nowadays, is struggling with the inflation and with many kind of the public problem, for example, decreasing of the public support. So Biden administration needs some refreshment, political refreshment, to take a breath for maybe 1 or 2 months, because it seems that this scenario happened today is take maybe too long for 1 or 2 months, and this is not depend on the disarmament and arm and gun, because all the gun production companies are supporting the American state. So the fact is they are preparing the people first. It's a harbinger for the chemical attack in Ukraine, first of all. Second, the political refreshment for the Biden administration because of the inflation, very high inflation, greater inflation in the states. And second and third one is, if you see, right now, America needs, for supporting the Ukraine war, needs more money, needs the budget. So they are producing some scenario to put this message on the people's mind that democracy is the second play. The first is right of life. Something is happening in Ukraine, and this is the preparation for the people opinion. I don't believe that this is a real attack. Thanks.
You don't think it's
Persian culture has produced such great works of fiction that it's not surprising to have our Iranian friend come up with the fiction of connecting Ukraine to this shooting. This is absolute fiction. And if I can just point out 2 empirical facts, because I think we need some empirical facts in this argument.
Yeah.
First of all, in those places in the United States where the gun laws are the strictest, such as New York City, such as Chicago, such as college campuses, the inability to quickly apprehend suspects is what leads to mass killings. In fact, if we look at data from Israel and from elsewhere, what we see is that a well-armed society, as long as it enforces its counterterror laws, is more quickly able to capture and apprehend people who conduct this sort of action.
Then Colonel Outzen, in that case, one sec. I tell you, Colonel Outzen, you see, you need to look at the pictures of today and ask yourself what your definition of a well-armed society is. You are a well-armed society. You are a well-armed society where there was the Orlando gun terror attack in 2016, and in that well-armed society, 49 people were killed. It was the biggest till 9/11, till then. Right, and then there is a study which has revealed the Orlando gun attack in 2016. 49 people were gunned down in a nightclub in Florida. It made it America's worst terrorist attack since 9/11. That is your well-armed society. Please understand, and I'm telling you this, Rich. The only way to ensure this violence does not happen in America, Adele, and also violence does not happen anywhere across the world, is to control your arms industry, your military industrial complex. You are creating havoc for Americans. You are creating havoc around the world. They are very powerful. All they want to do is make lots of money. And you need to understand, unless your government has the teeth to take them on, it won't work.
When criminals want to kill, they will kill. It will
you have
knives,
in your well-armed society, in your well-armed society, in your well-armed society, there is a study which has revealed that terrorist attacks in the US are more likely to involve guns than in other industrialized countries. That's your well-armed society.
I am shocked. I am shocked that when we have what looks to most of us like an act of terror,
yes,
you were attributing this to gun manufacturers.
I am not at all. No, what I'm clearly saying there. I am shocked. I am shocked that you do not understand that even after the Las Vegas gun attack in which 58 people were killed, 500 people were injured, gunman opens fire from the 32nd floor at an open air music festival, you are still in denial. You're in denial, my friend, not me.
No denial.
You're in
denial whatsoever. Rapid police response?
Yes, I'd like Lev to come in. No, rapid police response after the incident?
Yes.
Lev wants to come in. Lev.
I want to say, yes. I want to say that maybe Israel also is well-armed society, but it is not the same. For a normal person in Israel to get an arm is a nightmarish bureaucratic process. If you're not a soldier, or you don't live in a special place, or you're not a policeman, you cannot have a gun. That's why in Israel, to have a gun is an asset. And in America, it may be not an asset, as we see sometimes.
Yeah.
I hope the guy from Virginia agrees with me.
Actually, having lived in Israel, I agree with your assessment, but I would say the downside on the American part doesn't have to do with terror attacks and the response to it. It has to do with gun safety. And if it was required to have the same sorts of qualifications and training for the average citizen, in responsible usership, in other words, which I think Dov and some of the others would agree with.
I'm only coming from a point of concern, and Saurabh would understand that in America today, there has been a 30% increase in gun violence, murder in 2020. This was the largest annual increase. You need to be concerned about what's going on.
All in places with great gun laws, like New York City and Chicago. I'll point that out. It's not the laws that are required, it's the enforcement.
If I may just come in, Burke, okay, what we are trying to tell you here is that it's not about gun safety. It's about making sure that you don't allow everyone to own or procure a gun easily. That's the fundamental problem here.
Dov.
In any civilized country, like my friend from Israel said, even in India, there are strict laws here which prohibit proliferation of guns. This has been a bane for America, for God's sake, for your future generation.
Adele's responding to you. Adele.
Please do something to control the rapid proliferation of guns in your country.
Adele, please. Yes, Adele.
You can't allow young lives to be maimed in this manner.
Thank you so much. I have to say a few major points here. Of course, in 2020, there was the highest incidence of gun violence, a lot of self-inflicted suicides, actually, due to financial disparity, unfortunately, a lot of difficulty due to COVID. But let's also take a look at the gentleman from Israel pointing out that Israel has a well-controlled society. There's only 9.1 million people in Israel. There's 329 million people in the United States of America. It's very, very incongruent to compare the two, because just like with any culture, any society, you're always going to have a few people who are going to ruin it for everyone else. And this is the beauty and the hideous nature of the line of work that we're all in, right? We're here in the media. It takes to hyperinflate and to focus on things. And I have to say,
I'm not hyperinflating. I'm just saying here, and I want Brigadier General Nitzan Nuriel to come in, and he's been former head of Counterterrorism Bureau of Israel. I'm not hyper playing up anything here, Adele. What has happened in New York, we get concerned. Sometimes these are all trial runs that are done, and I think it's dangerous. I'm saying it's very, very dangerous to dismiss any incident as a lone wolf attack or the attack of a deranged individual.
The lone wolf attack, I think, theory has been, dismantled. It was very, very important to have been thought through.
No, in this case.
When ISIS first started to come to the foray, I think is when it started. But for sure, this is an...
But in the world that we live, with the kind of guns that we have, with the kind of dense populations, when we're talking about public transport, last point to Brigadier General Nitzan Nuriel, please. I think there should be a more organized response rather than isolate this as an individual case. Your audio, please, General Nitzan, your audio, and you need to unmute yourself, please. Thank you.
I'm saying that it's too soon to say what was on the ground this morning in New York. It can be lonely wolf attack based on anti-Semitism or hateness or something like that. it can be mentally healed. But I'm a bit concerned that we are in the beginning of a wave of terrorism based on religious, because we are just before the Jewish Passover, the Christian Pascha, and in the middle of the Ramadan by the Muslims. And the atmosphere among the religious can create the tense that push people to take actions. I'm very much believe that the New York police and the FBI will do the best in order to understand what was behind, because this is very crucial. If this is a mental heal event, it's one story. If this is terrorism based on religious, it's totally different story.
Totally.
And yes, comparing between United States and Israel, it's not a good idea. We are a small state. Most of us are serving in the military. I'm by myself carrying my pistol, especially during days like we are facing in Israel. And let's pray that that will not be more event like that.
Yes.
And all the injuries will be soon.
Absolutely. Well, General Nitzan, thank you very much, and thanks to everyone for joining me. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all very concerned, and if we have any more live updates of what has happened in New York, we shall be bringing it across to you without a second's delay. I shall see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Till then, good night and goodbye.